Namaste and welcome to the class. We have been studying in detail the Bharatanatyam, its traditions, its gurus and music and so many things. Today we are going to look into a very important aspect which is affecting Bharatanatyam today and to the future generations. That is the modern works that are done in Bharatanatyam. Bharatanatyam, for its very inception, has been an act of creativity and choreography. Virtually, almost one can say a new stringing of the old beads, but I would refrain from the old wine in a new bottle and prefer the metaphor of the garland, as the dance has mostly been a sadhana and an offering, at times to temple deities, at times to kings and nayakas, and at times to the new gods like the nation. The art has seen choreographing and re-choreographing of its historical narrative, the repertoire and the vocabulary of the dance to respond to new requirements. The very art of christening Sadir or Dasiyattam, the dance of the Devadasi as Bharatanatyam, was an act of creativity. Even before that, historical records reveal that the dance was given a new and never before fixed concert structure. This then became to be understood as the dance we know today as Bharatanatyam. Dancers of Bharatanatyam can easily seek kinship with the Apsaras in the epics and the Devadasis and courtesans of yore. But to imagine that classical Indian dance is timeless, or that the stories narrated in these dances have been handed down untouched and unshaped from ancient unrecorded times, is a bit too naive. Dance has always been malleable. It has constantly reinvented itself and learned continuously to speak a language that is relevant to the audience in attendance. Thus, classical dance, like everything else, is modern. Dancer Anita Ratnam, who has worked in India and globally, acknowledges that the dance they perform today is modern Bharatanatyam. It does not have a 5,000-year-old history. The Bharatanatyam of today was constituted in the 18th and 19th century. During independence, it took on another modern dimension. It is India's modern dance from the 20th century. So, we have to look at it from that modernistic lens. We have tried to hitch Bharatanatyam to an ancient timeline, which is not true, says Anita Ratnam. While Rukmini Devi Arundel and Kalakshetra School of Dance is credited with reviving a tradition, she is often criticized, particularly by feminists, for sanitizing the dance form. However, by the time Arundel took on her onerous task, the dance form as it was practiced by the Devadasis was anyhow a lost art, and the Devadasi way of life ceased to exist. Arundel could not have revived it at all without making it palatable to a conservative upper class, coaxing them to send their young daughters and sons to learn the art. However, she cautions against the tendency to revive the ancient form of dance without completely understanding the Devadasi tradition. The desexualization of the repertoire and choosing to go the bhakti route was required in order to make dance acceptable to an audience that had lost its appreciation for women living the life of the Devadasis. The desexualization of dance allowed its comeback, giving artists an opportunity to view it through a modern lens and shape it to reflect modern interpretations of gender and sexuality. Further, with music being relegated to a hobby and language teaching being limited, dancers today neither know the music that was essential to the ancient art of the Devadasi, nor do they know the ancient Telugu or Tamil or perhaps even Sanskrit. So, they only learn the movements without understanding the resonance or leaving the feeling. Thus, often what really impresses is what is true, lived and felt. Such things, given the life of the dancers, located within the often contrary pools of modernity, are often things that speak to the dancers more urgently. This is the reason why even Bharatanatyam, often believed to be a bastion of conservatism, is constantly being embellished with new choreographies. In this module or in this, we look at some of the new and modern work that emerged from springboard Bharatanatyam. Several Bharatanatyam dancers have adapted repertoires and cast them in different molds for a modern audience. Even the myths are interpreted through modern lenses. Classical art is narrative based, and very often the dancer, be it a man or woman, becomes what the story needs him or her to be. So, as a dancer, you transcend yourself and your gender to become a man or a woman or a tree or an animal or a creature. At the same time, there is that suspension of belief. The audience knows this is a woman, but this is story. She plays a man. In that way, the stories that Bharatanatyam dancers, in fact all Indian dancers tell, have passed through modern lenses and are modern interpretations. This is possibly why Bala Saraswati referred to dance having freedom through discipline and not freedom from discipline. In many cases, the dancers have used allied arts like theatre to create a different presentation or to say familiar things but differently. Many viewers and critics have dismissed such work as being hybrid or being confusion rather than fusion. True hybrid work goes beyond changing a movement, beyond adding film projection and beyond wearing a black leotard and black sari. A true hybrid success looks at relooking and choreographing from the inside. Playing with the traditions comes from someone who has mastered the tradition and then can play from the inside by relooking, reworking and readapting from the inside. In 1984 was a very significant year for Bharatanatyam, the dance that we were familiar with. It received its biggest challenge from Chandralekha. Trained in classical Bharatanatyam and a student of the famous teacher Yellappa Pillai, she became a legend in her own land in the 1950s. In 1972, gave up dancing from lack of faith in the fixed norms of classical Bharatanatyam. For 12 years, she paid her way by writing and by designing political placards. She also took part in the Indian movement for women and the environment. The turning point came in 84 as Chandralekha took part in an east-west encounter of Indian and European dancers in the Max Muller Bhavan in Bombay. This event proved to be the start of her new career, and a later year she produced her first new choreography, Angika, which is realized as a milestone in the history of Indian dancing. Starting with Angika, she called all her performances celebrations of human body, since she believes that body is as important as the spirit. Chandralekha's dancers do not wear the classical Bharatanatyam makeup and are dressed as simply as possible. Her style is based on Bharatanatyam but blends it with yoga and Kalaripayattu, the martial arts dance styles from Kerala. In the following years came new productions which made her well known for her clear and radical attitudes. In India, her innovative ideas and works caused a furor. Conservative critics accusing her of breaking the rules and of rendering Bharatanatyam banal. This made her India's most controversial choreographer, but did not prevent her from further influencing and renewing classical Indian dance. As a sign of her distance from traditional Indian dancing, Chandralekha does not have her dancers perform the traditional pranam prayer at the start. She counts as being a feminist, and if she herself disagrees, as she says, I am not a feminist, I am a woman, and therefore feel responsible for women's equality. Her work, Sri, is about equal rights for Indian women. On three levels, this choreography shows ancient myths about women's power. It is about equal rights during mating or the act of creation, about women's loss of power, and about regaining self-confidence. Yantra is a piece about sexuality, sensuality, spirituality, and the female principles of our culture. Her stark choreography and polemic statements on dance could also be seen in her 1989 work Leelavati, based on the first of the four parts of Siddhanta Shiromani, The Crown of Treatise, a mathematical text by the 12th century mathematical astronomer Bhaskaracharya's text. Mahakal of 95 has all the magic of Chandralekha's earlier choreography, which has its roots firmly in classical traditions, yet speaks of a defiance born of newer thoughts, processes, and contemporary ideas. A powerful visual interpretation of time, Mahakal encapsulates the essence of each yug, using her hybrid kinetics of Bharatanatyam, yoga, and the techniques of Kalaripayattu. In her 2000 production Sharir, The Fire and Desire, in which she again focuses on the relationship between body and feelings, continues to be evergreen. Even today, Chandralekha is controversial in India, though she has long since been internationally acclaimed. Chandralekha has received for her works many prizes like the Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 92, the International Time Out Dance Umbrella Award for the Best Dance Performance in Great Britain, and GAIA Award in Italy. Lakshmi Vishwanathan is a dancer who blends her traditional training with masters such as Srimati Kaushalya, Ganeshan Pillai, and Shankari Krishnan of the T. Kittappa Pillai School, and Guru K. Yallappa and Vempati Chinna Satyam. Her gurus in dance include T. Mukta and the legendary E. Krishna Iyer presided over her Arangetram. Being an innovative artist, Lakshmi had mastered hundreds of dance items when she decided to move away from mythology and choreographed path-breaking works. In 1995, she did the history of Bharatanatyam through dance, a production called Banyan Tree, followed by a production of Vidya Sundari based on the life of story of Bangalore Nagaratnambal. Both of these productions captured elements of intangible heritage. She also produced Chatur Anga, a big group production with 10 dancers. It had 4 aspects of freedom as its theme and used the poetry written by India's freedom fighters of the early 20th century. Mallika Sarabhai, the activist and Indian classical dancer, daughter of Mrinalini Sarabhai, is trained both in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi. Mrinalini Sarabhai was a pioneer in including social themes in Bharatanatyam based works such as creative choreography in Manushya in 49 and a critique of dowry deaths in Memory is a Regged Fragment of Eternity in 63. In an essay entitled Choreography, Mrinalini Sarabhai wrote, "The time factor has given all art a new dimension. Let dance speak in the language of old, but let dancers speak in a contemporary language, but with complete artistic integrity." Mallika Sarabhai is a performer who has specialized in using the arts for social change and transformation. In this respect, she carries forward the concerns of her mother. Despite having played the role of Draupadi in Peter Brook's Mahabharata for 5 years, she too decided to question mythology. Mallika, who describes herself as a communicator and believes that it encompasses her many roles as dancer, choreographer, publisher, activist, writer, actor, was nominated as one of the 1,000 young women who were collectively nominated for the Nobel Prize in 2005. Mallika started creating her own work in dance and in performance since 1989. In 1989, she performed the hard-hitting solo theatrical work Shakti, The Power of Woman. Her performance Sita's Daughters has toured the world and have been performed over 500 times in 3 languages. After that, she directed and acted in numerous productions reflecting current issues and awareness among people. Amongst them are An Idea Named Meera, In Search of the Goddess, and Swakranti, The Revolution Within. Mallika Sarabhai also wrote the script for the play Unsuni, based on Harsh Mender's book Unheard Voices, to raise awareness amongst children in elite schools and colleges to the real issues facing India's marginalized. In 2014, she recreated Kadak Badshahi, a multimedia production on the 603-year old history of the city of Ahmedabad that ran to full houses and is likely to be made into a film now. But how much of dance remains in Mallika's work and how much of Bharatanatyam can be seen in it is questionable. But over the years, the performances have brought her various awards: Sangeet Natak Academy Award 2000, Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters, French government, and the Padma Bhushan in 2010. Anita Ratnam was trained in Bharatanatyam under Adiya Lakshman from 1969 to 1978 and further strengthened her dance vocabulary at Kalakshetra, Chennai from 74 to 76 under S. Sharda and Sharda Hoffman. Trained also in the Kerala dance theatre tradition of Mohiniyattam and Kathakali, 1968 to 78. Anita, as a performer and choreographer, embraces both the traditional and contemporary streams of Indian dance to extend the frontiers of her art. In fact, Anita Ratnam names her style as Neo-Bharatam in order to evoke something new yet rooted in her own base of Bharatanatyam. Ratnam had coalitions with many Indians and international dance theatre companies. With them, she has done several unique works such as A Map of the World, 1997, with American poet Joy Horjo, The Inner World, 98, with Pangia World Theatre of Minneapolis, Daughters of the Ocean in 99 with Shobita Punja, The Writer, Dust in 2001 with Mark Taylor of Dance Alloy in Pittsburgh, United States in Vortex 2002 with Peter Chin, a Canadian dance artist. In year 2002, Ratnam was invited as a spectator to the Postmodern Dance Festival in Leipzig, Germany. In 2007, she presented her solo operatic performances Seven Graces at Joyce Soho, New York, in alliance with Hari Krishnan, a Canada-based dancer and choreographer. Inner World, based on ancient Tamil poems of love and war, was presented first in India and then with the Pangaea World Theatre of Minneapolis in USA. As the soundscape moved from Tamil to English, Anita moved beyond the familiar classical dance to create a framework that, including the spoken word, syllables from Tamil folk music, body stances from yoga and postures of prayer and meditation, a choreography that reflected contemporary impulses with echoes from an ancient past. Daughter of the Ocean, Discovering the Goddess Within was a 60-minute piece of contemporary dance theatre built around the myth of the Hindu goddesses in 1999. Written with the hope of seeing how Hindu myths could help us find patterns in our lives to understand ourselves. Anita had artistically, intelligently, and with great honesty captured in it the essence of Indian philosophy, a tearing away of Maya and rediscovery the goddess divinity within all that grows into our tree of passion and compassion. It was presented with dialogue, stylized abhinaya and humor. Dust, an artistic endeavor by her and American choreographer Mark Taylor, is based on the writings of Alexander David Neal. This 30-minute work with original music by Alice Shields was the result of a 3-year period of dialogue and experimentation between Anita Ratnam and Mark Taylor of Dance Alloy on the kinetic and aesthetic potentials of mixing traditional Bharatanatyam and contemporary post-modern movement forms. The music and movement images for Dust were drawn from the writings of Alexander David Neal, a European Buddhist scholar who was one of the first Westerners to enter the forbidden city of Lhasa, Tibet, as well as from photographs and sound sources of Tibetan landscape and culture. Ratnam escapes the charge of fusion work in this deeply realized work by claiming that I have taken the spatial challenges of modern dance and the attacking geometry of Bharatanatyam to really take the choreography to a third place. Dust was choreographed on 2 dancers from each company, Anusha Subramaniam and L. Narendra Kumar, and Andrei Kaslovsky and Gwen Ritchie, who bring alive the exciting blend of 2 cultures that reflect the ancient with the modern. Alice Shields, the music composer, created the sound sources that included Tibetan trumpets, Tibetan ritual conch shells, and Indian music. Seven Graces is a dance theatre performance by Anita Ratnam, created in collaboration with Hari Krishna in Dance of Canada. It references the Buddhist goddess Tara in a modern context, offering a journey to aesthetic eternities, exploring the aura and grace of the feminine transcendental. It embraces the many moods of human experience, Tara's 7 eyes, 7 colors, 7 chakras, and contrasts the moods of movement and stillness, rage and serenity. It used a mixture of artistic forms like classical dance, martial arts, folk dance, and Western opera. Her most recent solo production, Neelam, Drowning in Bliss, featured songs and chants from a range of devotional literature, including Andal, Annamacharya, and Muthuswami Dikshitar. In this piece of Bharatanatyam, with its characteristic leg stretches, rhythmic foot strikings, and the Ditai flourishes, was the predominant influence in the movement vocabulary, which Jatis composed for different pieces by Karaikudi Krishnamurti and K.S.R. Aniruddha, interspersing some of the vocals. She also created freer movement design, as in the undulating arms, to suggest the mythological ocean churned by the gods and demons. Besides the danced illusion of gesture and posture and movement were the visual illusions of the set and the lights and the props as well, an installation of lotuses, an arrangement of parrots, garlands used by the dancers to convey a variety of meanings, from the Swayamvar of Lakshmi rising out of the ocean of milk, to the Lakshman Rekha laid to protect Sita, to Ram's bow. Costumes by Sandhya Raman and Rex and visual design by Rex were inseparable aspects of the aesthetics. A number of noted singers include Sikkil Gurucharan and Subhiksha Rangarajan, temple artist and percussionist, lent their artistry to the production. The choreographic consultant was Hare Krishna. Additionally, G. Raghuraman of Delhi played the flute live during interludes between the pieces and sometimes joined in with the recording. This was a difficult task, but he proved equal to it. His opening cadences were highly evocative. Neelam exemplified how today's performing artists are engaging with inherited tradition. Dancer Rama Vaidyanathan has worked on several different choreographies that bring in different themes. In some cases, she uses freely written poetry in keeping with the theme in her production, Flight of Birds, a full margam of Bharatanatyam built around birds. She has used commissioned poetry to round off the theme. She commissioned a Sanskrit scholar called Divyanand Jha for Sanskrit poetry, and the pattern that they follow is that, knowing her precise requirements, she writes the poem or at least the concept in English, and he translates it into Sanskrit in an appropriate meter. In some of her work, she has used poetry in different language, as in the case of her program on Kashmiri Sufi poets. Her production, Mad and Divine, built around Kashmiri poet Lal Ded and Marathi poet Janabai, she was spoken word segments. She has worked along with theatre director Arvind Gaur in directing the dialogue portions. Although Arvind Gaur has worked also with Mallika, Rama's work cannot strictly be called dance theatre in the way that Mallika's or even Anita have treated it, as it is more in the nature of speech or Vachika Abhinay to take forward the theme. Noticeable also is Bharatanatyam dancer Geeta Chandran's work in using dance as a vehicle to build social bridges. Geeta was trained by Swarna Saraswati, who belonged to the Tanjore Devadasi Parampara. Among her choreographies that deal with social issue is Aval on gender, Shivam on environmental sensitivity, Punk on women's rights, and Imaging Peace on religious harmony. In this production, a film made by photographer and filmmaker Vandana Kohli was integrated to the production. Her path-breaking choreography with puppeteer Anurupa Roy of the Katakatha Puppet Company, her voice on the theme of futility of war and violence and how women get most impacted by it. In mythologies retold that pointed to the evil of female feoticide, She was artistically inspired by the archival painting collection of Rasaja Foundation. Actor dancer Rashmi Vaidyalingam was her creative collaborator in this. Geeta has also forayed into dance theatre. Her creative exploration with Rashid Ansari led to the performance Kaikayi, a solo theatre exposition in which the character and her psychology was unveiled by Geeta using her skills in dance, movement, singing, narration and acting. Geeta has always been very sensitive to the impact of costumes and shares a deep interest in the textile traditions of India. She has worked extensively with handloom, visualize Shashiv Chandran and designer Sandhya Raman. And voicing women's concern is Parul Shah of Baroda. She created Nirguna, collaborating with Jinwen Yu, the chair dance at University of Wisconsin at Madison, and Abhishap with Peggy Myo Choi. Parul's Buddha Tattva had blessings of Dalai Lama. In an unique attempt, she created Rajalakshmi as her homage to the Sriman Sayajirao Gaikwad and the MS University, which is the torchbearer in the bringing of arts to the higher education. Thus, it is a force of such dancers to cast tales in modern times and reinterpreting forms and their presentations in an excited, positive and proactive manner instead of mourning the loss of an older tradition. This has helped Bharatanatyam and cast Bharatanatyam and classical dance in more relevant light and made it more relatable and reachable to today's far more distracted audiences. And after your strong training of Bharatanatyam, you are expected to take further the reach of this dance. Thank you. Bye.